talked about like tolerance and acceptance
Yes.
of diverse cultures and perspectives, right? But what happens in a situation where there is a culture or let's say, a perspective, right, that is kind of antagonistic to the prevailing culture
Culture.
in a state already, right? So, like for example, where you have like hardline Islamic fundamentalists probably trying to institute like a Sharia law in a country like Canada that is like a free liberal society.
Yes.
In that constitution, how exactly can you like merge the concept of tolerance or acceptance? Don't you think that maybe there are just some
They're on opposite
cultures
sides.
here that may just not be able to tolerate each other or accept each other because they are just antagonistic to each other?
Now that's a very good question. Yeah. And one answer I would give is that Canada doesn't seem to have that problem
Yeah,
currently.
obviously I'm not saying it's happening. I'm just saying
Yeah.
like
If it were to happen,
yeah, it's because we talked about like the for some of the things that are encoded into the like the
to the
Canadian law,
law, yes.
right? I agree with that. But the people who were making those laws in those times, they may not even necessarily have factored in like a sort of polarized or antagonistic viewpoint coming into the country and
Country, yeah.
becoming a significant part of like the culture.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like Islamism. I'm just saying like for example, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, but then in that kind of situation, the law, the people who made the law did not necessarily envisage any form of like antagonism in cultural identities because it was majorly like French speaking, English
English speaking,
speaking,
then indigenous
indigenous
groups.
groups at that time. Right. Now,
No, even at the time they made the laws, we already had large groups of other ethnicities in Canada. Because 1988 is not
yeah,
that
but
is not that
they were
long
much
ago.
more
Even till now, there are still more French speaking, more English speaking people from like of European descent
yeah.
than other immigrants. Oh, it's still the same till now, yeah. I understand your point, and
Yeah.
I feel like lots of it stems from Europe. Europe is the one that has this issue. And one of the reasons that I think for it is because people were brought into European societies and there was not a pathway for them to, adopt the cultures of the new countries that they came into. Now, Denmark is one country that has restrictions on immigration. And one of the reasons is that there's a entire Danish identity they are trying to like protect, yeah. And so they didn't really like when there was a huge wave of immigration in Europe, that Denmark didn't really participate. And that's why you find that like in Denmark, you can't in Denmark football team, for example, you can't find any black person there because like there are hardly other groups there. Now, European countries allowed immigrants to enter, and there was not a stated plan of how to integrate these people fully into their societies. So now, like for example, everybody that goes to Canada knows that, oh, I'm becoming a Canadian.
Yeah.
So I have to subscribe to Canadian values.
Yeah. Correct.
So people going into Europe are not going there to think that, oh, I'm becoming French. Now I have to be subscribed to French values. Because the government is not encouraging everybody to, have this common identity and shared values. Even in Canada, they still have like, oh, I am Hindu. Like those, there are some guys there that wear this turban on their head.
Yeah.
Those same guys, they are different. They have, they do Diwali and all their festivals and all those stuff. So they have their own distinct identity, even in Canada. But at the end of the day, they still identify as what? Canadians. So I feel like one of the issues that Europe had was not lack of assimilation there. And the assimilation is not like, oh, you force everybody to accept, because that's one of the things that happened in the past.
Yeah.
Like, when a kingdom conquers another kingdom, there's forced assimilation.
Yeah.
I think we mentioned there, but like, some of the jihad and some of like, the empire building that happened, like, Greece, Romans, like everybody was forced to adopt a certain identity.
Yeah.
But like this one is just encouraging and like saying, okay, everybody is equal under the law. Like we're going to promote your interests, and because a lot of times these people are being forced to survive. So they are pushed into groups that accept them. And one of the groups that accept them are these hardline Islamists. So they find home, they find brotherhood in those people. That's what happens. Like, so they find a community, because Josh mentioned it, we need that sense of community. So if they cannot get it amongst people who share the good and positive values, and they're finding it in the guys that share, in quotes, the bad and negative values, they're going to go to those people and start to accept their beliefs, because at the end of the day, like, they are just trying to survive.
All right. So, that was a good dissection of the problem. So, but I still feel like we still have to like go more in depth in the sense that you raised a good point that maybe there's not a clear pathway for integration and
Yes.
assimilation, right? And maybe yeah, they can improve in that aspect. But also, one of the things they say is like it's not really like most of or a significant portion of the immigration is not really like legal immigration where you have to take tests and then do some assimilation processes and all of that.
Oh
It's
yes.
most of a significant part of it rather is like
Illegal.
refugee, yeah, illegal
Oh,
actually.
let's go straight to
That's
the
why
point and like say
actually because
illegal.
they come as refugees, right? They're
Yeah,
seeking political refugees. And then,
asylum seekers
yeah,
and all
asylum
that.
seekers, obviously most of them is more like economic
Not just economic
benefits.
instability in their countries.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we mentioned it before, and one of the reasons why it's like that because these countries actively participated and are still actively participating in the destabilization of those
We
regions.
are going to talk about that. But what I'm saying now is this: like, so a significant part of it is coming from like refugee people seeking refugee status, right? And when they come in, they still have to go through like the courts for them to hear their refugee pleas and decide whether or not it conforms to the law or not, right? So, but pending that time, there's already this growing like population and all of that, and some of them it's easier to just miss the system and all of that, right? So that's part of what is causing the difficulty in as in like increasing the assimilation process or improving the
Yes.
assimilation process and integration process. Right. So what I'm saying now is this. So when you have like a situation like that on ground, where you're finding it hard to assimilate people because of the intricacies of the situation and difficulties, people coming in for political instability. You still have to try the cases before you can do that.
Before you can accept them
Yeah, before you can
formally.
accept them formally. So it's a whole lot of process, and it's before they can do that, they already have the situation on ground now that you're talking about. So how can they now deal with that, right? Because it's something that's causing a rise in anti-immigration sentiments in the world, not just in Europe, even in the United States. We just saw the recent election of Donald Trump. One of the
Yes.
things that he wants to do is deport illegal migrants. Like he has made it like one of the focal points of his of his campaign to deport illegal migrants, right? So basically what I'm saying is like so when you now start having this lack of assimilation, immigrants are coming into like places like London, forming their own communities, individual sectionalities, and all of that. And the English people are feeling a bit disoriented by that change in culture and all of that. So, how can they address the situation based on the reality on
On
ground now
ground.
that you have a situation where people are not assimilated into the society?
So I think they would have to be honest with themselves. So Europe has to decide, okay, do we not want to accept immigrants anymore? Now, the people with the nationalist sentiment, that's what they want. Like the entire society has to have that conversation that we want this or do we not want this. We saw that with Brexit. They voted the yes at it, and we are seeing the ripple effects. They are losing billions of economic value. Yes. So they need to form an argument point and accept whatever decision is made.
Right.
And accept the consequences too, whether they be good or bad. So, like, okay, we don't want immigrants anymore. What are the processes by which we stop that? And another thing that is important is that, like, as I mentioned,